We are awakening together. This is our weekly gathering we hold online. For more information, visit our website, awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you there.
Good morning, beloveds, and thank you so much, Dawn. It is a pleasure to be here with you guys today. It is a lovely, as Dawn mentioned, we are already here welcoming in the month of August, and that to me is nothing short of amazing. All right, thank you, Dawn. It is wonderful, as always, to see everyone in the sanctuary from all over these here United States and other places as well, huh? All right, so now it's time for our statement of purpose. We are an assembly of equals joined in common purpose, awakening to one true self. Within an appearance of many faiths, many cultures, and many symbols, we seek to discern one truth and to rest in its embrace. All right, thank you, Dawn. Please join me in silence for a moment here. So much wants to be said today. I feel the forward energy movement of thoughts, things, people. I would start this prayer by saying thank you. Thank you to all that is. Thank you for the perfection that constantly emanates through everything. That perfection is here and active right now. And so I know deeply that all I need to do is be present, be here, be now, and allow whatever needs to be said, whatever needs to be felt, and whatever needs to be known, to be known. I'm thankful for each and every member, anyone who hears this message. I'm grateful for your presence, for your beingness, for all that you contribute to the perfection that is. So it is, and so I let it be. Amen. All right, so that's going to bring us right on up to our reading for today. Today's reading is, it really came about, during the course of getting through some of everything that everyone's been going through. I was scheduled to read back in June, and that didn't work. That didn't pan out to be what happened. And of course, at that time, I had a reading ready to go that I was prepared to deliver at that time. And I thought that reading would continue to be the reading for today. But it changed. I don't even know how I got to the reading that I didn't go into a search looking for a reading, something to read. I was just clicking around and landed on the reading that you'll hear Kathy read here in a moment. Once I read this reading, and this is from a small little ebook, that was written a while ago, I think, from a Chinese sage by the name of, I can't pronounce his whole name, but I'll try. It's Tejguru Sirshree and the rest. I can't make out the last name. But when I read it was just a small ebook with a few chapters in it. And when I read the foreword of the book, I thought, okay, that says everything. I felt that was what this particular talk today would be about. And the name of the book is called Detachment from Attachment, right? And that's what this talk today will ultimately revolve around, is detachment. What that is, what it looks like, what I've dealt with in learning to have a more detached approach to everything that's going on. So I don't want to delay the reading any longer. I want to say a huge thank you to Kathy. You guys can never know how grateful I am to her for always agreeing to come forward and read to me, especially when I get in a pinch. I always find myself in a pinch. So Kathy, great love to you. I'm going to release this mic to you and ask you to come forward and read today's reading from this Tejguru.
Good morning, everybody. And I'm always willing to read at the last minute for you, Reverend Gloria, so never fail to reach out. If I can, I definitely will. So here we go. Mind is unsteady and constantly fluctuating, in which continuous changes are taking place. If in the morning the mind is filled with jealousy, it is anger in the afternoon, greed in the evening, and confusion in the night. Every moment it is changing. Sometimes it's sad and sometimes happy. One moment it is filled with trust, and the next moment it's full of distrust and suspicion. For a moment, it is very sincere, and the next moment it's filled with deceit. What is showing compassion one moment changes to anger the next moment. The one that was ready to die for someone jumps up at the next moment to kill the same person. The mind, which is wavering in this manner every minute, does not deserve to be trusted. Unfortunately, we have become one with this ever-changing mind. We have become attached to it. We have identified ourselves with our mind. We have developed faith and reverence towards the erratic and fickle mind. In reality, mind is an illusion. This means it does not exist, but only appears to exist. It is necessary to understand how this mind gets created. There is no existence of mind, but it seems to exist. It's just like a straight wooden stick, which, when you put it in water, looks bent, while it actually is not bent. It's also like a rope, which looks like a snake in the dark, while actually it is not. It is only because of darkness that a rope looks like a snake. Similarly, it is only because of ignorance that the mind seems to exist, but it actually does not. To know the mind, it is necessary to see it under the light of wisdom. Mind gets created due to identification with it. The moment we say, I am the body, or I am the mind gets formed. As soon as we get associated with the mind, we become the mind and say, I am the mind. When we get associated to wealth, we say, I am wealthy. When associated to position, we say, I am the prime minister. When associated to religion, we say, I am Hindu, Muslim, Christian, etc. You become that to which you add an I. For example, let us take the case when during a marriage ceremony, a bride garlands the bridegroom. Just a moment prior to garlanding, no one from the other side was a relative, nor was there any attachment to anyone. But the moment the garlanding is done, at once, many relations get established, like mother-in-law, father-in-law, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, etc. Then, with this long line of relatives, starts the game of attachment. In the same way, when you say, I am the mind, i.e., when you garland the mind, all the relatives of mind become your relatives. This also is a long list. Anger, lust, hatred, envy, competition, irritation, confusion, sadness, happiness, sorrow, friendliness, enmity, restlessness, success or failure, and you become correlated to all these relatives. Desires, longings, wants, or lust, these are the biggest weapons of the mind. Mind derives its life from them. It is these that sustain the mind. The main job of mind is to keep the desires and wants alive. The mind keeps arousing desires constantly, and the desires keep arising all the time. When the desires do not get fulfilled, you get angry. When the desires get fulfilled, it leads to greed. With greed, you begin to acquire objects, and then you start getting attached or obsessed with those objects. When you have accumulated a sizable amount, you start getting egoistic. In this manner, the chain of bondage is connected together by different links. But remember, any chain is as strong as the weakest link. If the link of attachment is made weak, the shackle can be broken here. The opposite of attachment is detachment, indifference, unconcern, or apathy. The moment you become indifferent, how can the chain of bondage remain intact? This book intends to work precisely on this weak link. You have to remain detached in this world, just like the spider which lives in a web but doesn't get caught in it. Break this weak link by getting rid of attachment and attain freedom. Releasing the mic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Perfectly, perfectly, perfectly read. All right, so I do want to comment on the core value, the Awakening Together core value that this talk today hopes to center on, and that's core value number 5. We accept all forms as temporary appearances permitted through enduring awareness of self. We live this value by honoring all appearances and all experiences while continually reflecting on changeless truth. All right, so the story that Kathy read from today, this whole notion about detachment, for me, that's been a this thing. We've heard people come forward and talk a lot um, in the sanctuary here recently about their experience through this, and I absolutely believe that having these discussions and being able to have a safe space to uh, pour out what you're feeling and whatever emotions you have that are coming up is a wonderful thing, and we've heard that. We've heard as we've gone through this amazing year of 2020, uh, watching life just absolutely do what it is going to do, watching reality be what it is in a very major, in very major ways. Major shifts and major occurrences have happened, you know, and a lot of us have experienced a very deep uh, opening, wounds that or pains or feelings that have been either stuffed down or forgotten about or laid aside have come to the surface. They've come to the surface to be seen, to be dealt with, to be let go of. And I have, of course, experienced that along with everyone else, to a degree that, it just brought up so much that I either, like I said, either gotten over or something to that nature. But, it just felt very visceral, you know. And so I want to talk today about this detachment that has occurred for me over time, dealing with going through and experiencing what we've all experienced. Um, Coming to a place where there is a sense of not being so emotionally shaken or drawn or affected by what I see. So the first thing I want to start out with is that um, knowing and abiding are not the same. They are not the same experience. And I know that seems so obvious when I say it, and it does. It feels like, duh, obviously those are two very distinct experiences. But once you have, for me, once there was a certain level of knowing, once there was a certain level of um, acknowledging the truth, sitting with the truth, speaking the truth, You know, I talked about in the announcements today, or I said that in the announcements today, that part of our understanding comes from teaching. We teach what we most need to learn. And that's no different for me. What I'm talking about today, detachment, is what I most need to learn right now in this moment in time. And so as we learn, as we acquire knowledge about oneness, about love, about the truth, and there's not a lot of shifting going on in our personal little bubbles that would cause any conflicts with that truth, right? There's nothing conflicting with those truths that you know. So you can abide there. You can abide in that knowing. And we do abide in that knowing. I know I do often. But this whole shaking up this year has revealed that just as easily I can be moved back into a space of not being okay, right? Where it seems like everything that I thought I knew is now somehow distant or not very clear. So knowing and abiding are two different functions. That's the first thing I think that became very aware to me, because I have experienced that ability to abide, that ability to stay where you know the truth lives, which is within you, the ability to do that is directly tied to your ability to be detached from what's happening. You know, Michael Langford has talked about the that intense desire that we need to make it through this journey, to really get through that eye of the needle, you know. And it's, at first I thought you just needed that intense desire just to know it, like just to look away from the things that are not reflecting that truth necessarily, and to just stay here in this knowing. You know, I thought that the intense desire, and for a while that was absolutely true for me. It took a lot of, it felt like intense desire for me to not believe what I was seeing, or believe the thoughts that were constantly making themselves known to me at times. But that intense desire carries on beyond knowing. That intense desire is also needed to abide. That intense desire is also needed to remain in this detached place, this indifferent, this unconcerned, because it's so easy to get unconcerned confused with I don't care. And for someone who, like me, who's very heart-centered and, you know, constantly pouring generosity, love, you know, all of those things through my being, you know, to take that type of indifferent approach to life seems like a stretch. It seems like something that would require me to apply intense desire, right? Thoughts are the roadblock, again, to detachment. You know, I was clicking through some videos a while back, and I came across this TEDx talk, and I don't even remember the guy's name. I don't remember who was giving the talk, but it caught my attention and I listened to him for a little bit because what he was talking about was thoughts, you know, and how the exact same thing I'm talking about here, how they have the power to absolutely get us out of that abiding space and into that space of being pulled in every direction depending on the flavor of the day. So in this talk, he talked about two questions that you could ask yourself when the thoughts were going haywire or, you know, pressing in. And so I listened to him give those two questions, and then I went on and applied those two questions to my thoughts, probably for the next week or so. You know, I really like intensely applied those questions to my thoughts. And those two questions are, is this thought useful? And how does this thought behave? Right? Is this thought useful? And how does this thought behave? So when I first heard that, I went, well, I can see the point of the first question, because the first question kind of it confronts the thought in a way that, you know, you if I can see that there's not any use in the thought, I can let it fall away. You know, if I can really see that there's nothing that I can gain or that matters to me really in that thought, because I know I do. I get random thoughts all the time, and I'm sure you guys do too. Thoughts that really have no real use for this present moment, right? Because the goal is always for us to remain here, now, in this moment. And I could see the value in that first question, because if that thought does not pertain to this moment, then it really has no use for me in this moment, right? So I saw the value in the first question right away. But the second question, how does the thought behave, was a little shady for me, or there was a shady area there. It wasn't crystal clear to me, although, you know, it kind of made sense, but not the way the first question did initially. So as I practiced with the question, how does the thought behave, I began to see what Kathy was reading about in the reading today. How easily thoughts go from being kind and loving to vicious or malicious. Regina talked recently about a verse in the Course that talks about how the mind, the ego shifts from being very nice to malicious, you know, that verse in the Course. But I saw this evidence so clearly when that was the question, when I specifically asked the question, how do these thoughts behave? It became so clear to me that that was absolutely the case, that thoughts can indeed go from being compassionate and loving, giving and caring, to unruly, angry, disconnected, you know, in the split second. If you're paying attention to it, you'll see it, if you haven't already discovered it. So it was in the watching of those thoughts in that way, asking those two questions about the thoughts that were constantly coming up, And I was asking those questions at a critical time, at a time when I was still experiencing a lot of the outrage from everything, you know, and pain from everything, you know. And I've learned in watching those thoughts more carefully like that and asking those kinds of questions that a lot of what I was feeling wasn't even my stuff. It was stuff that I inherited, stuff that was ingrained in me. You know, I can remember when I first set out on this journey to uh, become more spiritually connected and involved with the truth. It's been a long journey when I sit back and think about where it really started. I can remember, and this was maybe 20 years ago. No, not 20, maybe 15 years ago. Um, I can remember when I first started learning things like uh, Abraham Hicks' work, uh, Beatty, uh, Kate. Uh, hmm, I can't call her name right now either. Somebody probably put it in the room. Um, yeah, I was just learning about these, and it felt so, back then it just felt natural. It felt like, okay, of course, yeah, this is good stuff. And I felt the need to share this information with the people that I love the most. Right? I was so excited about it. I knew then that I was on to something. I didn't have a clue at all I don't think there were many layers that had to be unfolded for me to get to obviously wherever I am today. Um, but at the beginning, I can remember wanting my family to know this information. I can remember starting a chat room back then, inviting uh, many of my closest family members to come in and listen to some of the information that I had learned about. I wanted so much because there is this attachment, the attachments that we talked about earlier. There is this deep-seated attachment to my culture, to my people, to my ancestors. There's a deep attachment there, and I know it's there, you know, and it's always been there, I think. And so I wanted them to have the knowledge too. It didn't you know, I was only able to get like maybe 4 people to join me, and of those maybe 2 stayed with me more than 2 weeks. And then I had a niece that I still have a niece. She actually did thoroughly enjoy it, and to this day she's, you know, more conscious than most people her age, most 20-something-year-olds her age. Um, but there was this desire for them to have the exact same knowledge that I had. And over time, I went on from there. After that start, I went on to do a internet show with a lovely married couple, African American couple, uh, who were doctor team. They had this great show going, and they did book clubs, and I presented one of my a book that, you know, it was just a lot of fun, and I enjoyed connecting. I enjoyed being with people that I could relate to and sharing like minds. I really enjoyed that. But as time went on and I grew and matured, and then I found Awakening Together. And from there, you know, I connected here, and began to grow even more. But I think what one thing that's come to light for me is that there's still always been that deep-seated need to want to include the people that I love, but I don't have any control over, and I'm keenly aware of that. I'm under no delusions there. I'm not at all believing that me wanting someone to get involved and get the knowledge and bring them to the table to is not the same as having, it just doesn't work that way. you know Everyone is on their own path. Everyone learns at their own pace. And if it is anyone's destiny to be to learn in this way, to gain knowledge in this way, the way that we do here, then just like you and I were drawn into this group, they would also be naturally drawn into where they need to be. So again, the art of being able to detach from that whole want, that desire, right? That desire to have the people that I love also get this knowledge. I think a part of me has survivor's remorse, right? When and it's an invisible hurdle that it's hard for me to even vocalize this and give you a clear understanding of where I'm coming from with this. So there's that was uncovered. I needed to look at that and see it for what it was and allow it to just be what it is, and detach that sense of indifference. As I move through these layers, as I become more aware and I continue to watch my thoughts in that way, I continue to, think and say, hey, is that thought useful? And how is it behaving? Because if it's not behaving, part of this story, the story that Kathy read from the forward there about the book Detachment from Attachment, there's a byline there in that book that says, and that was also the byline of my talk today. It says, letting bliss succeed and letting sorrow fail. So we're always making one choice or another. And I know there's nothing in that reading probably that you haven't heard before. There's nothing new there. So we're always making the choice. And ever since I've read this little book and using the 2 questions, I'm understanding that if the thought is either behaving like it's letting bliss succeed, my joy, which is always here, which is always present, which is always perfect, I'm either letting bliss succeed with my thoughts, or I'm letting sorrow succeed with my thoughts. So I've learned to begin to see those thoughts as one of the 2. And if it's not letting bliss succeed, then it's something that has to be analyzed further. It has to be looked at closer. And that's what this is all about at this point for me. Being aware of the thoughts that I'm thinking. How are they behaving? Because you're either promoting love or you're not. I mean, the thoughts are either you know, and you know, there are also the thoughts that we have when it comes to planning, you know, putting things together. But this sense of duality, you know, that I experienced when I started to look at my thoughts. And then I also understood that the thoughts were the thing that was promoting all of the feelings, right? It's that loop that Regina has taught us about many, many times. What I think about, I see. What I see, I experience. And what I experience, I think about. It's the loop of reality. And the only way for me to break out of that loop, out of that outrage that I felt, because I did feel outrage, I did feel pain, I did feel angry and upset. So to get to a place where there was a sense of indifference here about what I've seen, what I've experienced, is for me nothing short of a miracle. And I don't take it lightly. Being detached doesn't mean I don't care. Being detached doesn't mean anything other than I'm not being carried away, swept away by what's going on in the now, in the present, where I live. So yeah, that it was a really good place for me to end up after where I started, you know, having gone through those emotions, having been able to look at them. And I credit that completely to the consistent practice, you know, showing up here in this sanctuary, listening to teachers, reading materials that talk about the truth, you know, staying connected in that way. It's all helpful. You know, for a time I wondered, like, what, nothing's happening. What good is all this? What, nothing's really shifting in my life. So I went through a phase where I felt like nothing was changing, nothing was shifting, nothing was any different than what it was when I started meditating or when I started praying or when I started connecting. But as you go through life and you come across these really big hurdles, like what we've experienced this year, that's when it becomes evident that you've put whatever you've put into your practice. If you've sat and meditated, if you've read, if you've prayed, if you've shown up in the sanctuary, if you're a teacher, whatever you're doing to stay in alignment with truth, that's when it becomes evident. That work becomes evident, is when you come to a hurdle. And sometimes these hurdles are so high. The bar is set so high sometimes in life. And when we get to a point in life where there's a need to jump high to get over that hurdle, to get on with life, that's the point that everything that you've done before that time is evident. You've laid the foundation for whatever truth needs to come through, because that's what's happened for me. A lot of truth has come through and been revealed to me in layers. The detachment piece, the thoughts, Holy Spirit guiding me exactly where I need to focus. Focus on the thoughts. The thoughts are what's causing your pain. Reality is still perfectly in sync, perfectly moving through every phase, doing what it needs to do to get all of us to a higher level of being, a higher level of understanding. And so you can focus on, this is what I'm being told, you can focus on this particular area, your thoughts. And from there, okay, now you're ready to talk about detachment. And it was all, I didn't go into this saying, okay, first I'm going to do thoughts, and then I'm going to do detachment, and then I'm going to go to acceptance. That's not the way it works. You're given what you need when you need it. And the fact that you've laid the foundation to receive right when it's needed is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing, and I love watching it unfold and knowing, you know. And I know that, like I said at the beginning, knowing isn't abiding. I know that each and every time I'm building up that strength to abide more, to abide in the knowing, as the knowing, and not as some third party looking in, wondering what it would be like to know. It's all perfect, all of it. It's all necessary. Every hurdle, every perceived hurdle, right? Because as we heard in the reading today, mind is an illusion that we're identified with. Whatever aspect of the mind we're identifying with will become our master. We're in service to the mind instead of the mind being in service to us. That was my experience. I'm not saying that you're not, that anyone is anything other than perfect, but that has been my experience. That's been my personal experience. And so I feel complete with what I wanted to share at the beginning. I really did. I felt like so much wanted to be said, so much wanted to come through today. And I hope that whatever I've shared, here about detachment will end the two questions. Try those two questions out. If you're not in the habit of questioning your thoughts in that way, try those two questions out and see what comes up for you. All right? Now is also a great time for you to make a donation to Awakening Together if that's what you're called to do. Your donations are greatly appreciated, and I'm sure Dawn has already probably posted a link in the room for you to do so. All right? All right, great. Thank you, Dawn. All right, so if there's anybody who wants to share, we do have a few minutes here before George comes up with fellowship hours. So if anyone wants to share, go ahead and put your hand up. And Dawn, you can let me know, please, if somebody has their hand up.
Reverend Gloria, would you explain the second question that was asked again?
Sure. The second question, you're talking about the two questions where you're questioning your thoughts, right? The second question was, how does this thought behave? How is this thought behaving that just showed up in my awareness? I was just thinking as we were listening to that last song that I had a lesson in detachment. Right as I was getting ready to speak this morning, I couldn't find my, what is it called? Oh my goodness. The thing I wear around my my neck when I'm talking. I couldn't find it this morning, and it's because I just recently moved, and I moved unexpectedly. So, when you're moving, and if it's planned, you can get things lost. So if it's unplanned, you can really, stuff can just disappear into thin air, literally. And so I'm looking for it still, but I couldn't find it this morning. And so I had to sit quietly for just a couple minutes and detach. There was this thoughts were coming in. Well, how could you not pay attention where you put that at? That's like really, and so quickly I went to these two questions. How is this thought behaving? And is this thought useful? Is this thought useful? No, it wasn't useful to beat myself up for not knowing where my thing was. It wasn't helpful, nor was it putting me in a blissful place to think about that. So at that point, it became really quickly evident that that was a thought I could let go of, that I did not have to sit here and put myself through the ringer because I couldn't find it. The show must go on, and it did go on. Anyone else with questions?
Reverend Gloria?
Yes.
When you were talking about the second question, what came to me was, as we watch our thoughts, and I notice those thoughts of anger or rage or whatever it might be, if I allow my attention to focus on those and they bubble into, further upset, that generally plays out in my physical behaviors in some way, shape, or form. I, start spewing some kind of opinion or judgment about it, or what I think. There's that I that article talked about. Every time I attach an I to a thought, I've claimed it as who I am. I've claimed it as what I am. I'm my mind. And we say that mind is nothing more than our thoughts. And so if I'm listening to that mind, as opposed to just observing, the anger, and feeling that anger, not denying it or acting like it's not there, and I'm way too holy for these rageful thoughts. But yet, like you said, seeing it and asking right then, and is this helpful? Is this helping me right now to be peaceful, to feel loving, to want to do the right thing and step away from it and turn towards the truth of who I am? Or am I so attached that I won't turn away, that I allow the spewing to go on, that I allow the judgment to seem righteous, that I entertain it, that I engage someone else with it, that I act like I know what I'm talking about, any of that. And even observing that, it's so unhelpful. It's so unsettling for me that I have to ask myself, why would you continue to do that if you in fact know that it doesn't feel good, know that it's not really what you want? Why? And so that inquiry becomes really important. And I acknowledge sometimes I do want that rage more than I want to turn towards the self. And you know what? That's what it is right then. And I can change in the next instant. That's what that whole article started with. 1 minute you're this way, and the next minute you're that way. And either way is not the truth of who you are. Either way, centered or uncentered. The centered piece of it is a pointer to the truth of who you are, but it's not the truth, because if it could shift that quickly from this to that, it wasn't you to begin with. So let it all go. And thank you for sharing today, Reverend Gloria. I appreciated what you had to say. I'll let go.
Thank you, Kathy. I do see that Jacqueline has found the TEDx talk. That's great, Jacqueline. Thank you so much. That's exactly the 2 easily remembered questions, the silence negative thoughts. It was perfect. That's what drew me into the TEDx talk, was the title, because at that moment I was dealing with negative thoughts. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us here today. I'm going to release this mic to Dawn and let her bring it on in. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. This was our weekly gathering that we hold online. For more information, you can visit our website at awakening-together.org, or you can subscribe to our Awakening Together channel and click the bell for more notifications when we post our weekly gatherings. Thank you again for watching.